Good morning, everybody. I'm your moderator, Henry Bonsu. I've done a number of sessions during this excellent week, the World Forestry Congress. I'm delighted to see a decent number of you here this morning, and hopefully during the next 2 hours or so, we'll get more people in, because this is a special event. So are you feeling special this morning? What a terrible response. I'll try again. Are you feeling special this morning? Do you believe you are special? Are you going to be special? Are you going to make great contributions? When you hear the words rural finance, forest and producers and indigenous peoples at the center of the green recovery, do you think, yes, that's me? Not everybody believes. Lyndall, I hope you believe. Do you believe? All right, well, I'm delighted because this is a special event. So rural finance, forests and producers and indigenous peoples at the center of the green recovery. This is important. It's co-organized by a number of groups: the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, CEDA, which is Swedish, of course, Development Cooperation Agency, and the Forest and Farm Facility, a partnership between FAO, IIED, IUCN, and AgriCord. Let's do a bit of background about food systems. We had a food systems summit held by the UN in September last year. It's supposed to transform things. We want to shift from traditional vertical value chains, especially monocultures, with harmful environmental consequences, to more eco-friendly. Everybody wants to be eco-friendly and diversified production systems. And you're going to hear this term a lot, like the basket of products approach to respond to climate change and its consequences. We want to adapt rural financing mechanisms to the producers on the ground. That's essential in order to achieve this. Leaders and stakeholders around the world are calling for a green recovery from the pandemic to, and what are those three words? Build back better. Am I saying this to you for the first time? Build back better. Say it. Build back better. Everybody's saying that around the world. Forest and farm producer organizations and indigenous peoples are critical actors. We agree with this now in building well-grounded, lasting solutions to climatic, economic, and social changes, including the current pandemic. Support for catalytic efforts can bring them a step closer to responding to the current crisis, contributing to a green recovery with inclusive and sustainable recovery plans. If we can do this, we want to develop smart policies that discourage market distortions and unsustainable practices. That's the key role of governments. Governments set the framework. Policies that improve access to finance can include incentives, collateral and guarantee funding to de-risk, to encourage government procurement and lower administrative and tax barriers. So today, who are we going to hear from? Well, we'll hear from governments, the private sector, or indeed impact investor, forest and farm producer organizations, as well as donors who are funding this green recovery, to understand, and we really want to understand, what is working already and what more needs to be done. So having said that, having given you that background, let's introduce our first speaker, who's going to be online. A number of our speakers today will be online, and some live here in the room. We're going to start off with Mr. Rob Boesink, who is Senior Policy Advisor, International Forest Policy Affairs at the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture, one of the partners today, Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality. He's been engaged in drafting the Netherlands' policy commitment to international forest conservation and restoration. So he's going to set the scene for us this morning. He's going to introduce the potential role of fish farmer producer organizations in global challenges, and he's going to share key findings on improving their access to finance in forest and farm landscapes. So let's welcome Mr. Rob Boesink, who's going to join us on the line. Let's give him a round of applause. And by the wonder of technology...
Well, thank you very much. You hear me?
We can hear you, Rob, but we cannot yet see you.
Okay.
We want to see you.
You see me now?
Yes. You're looking good. You're
Okay,
looking good.
great. Well, thank you very much, Henry. And also already to answer your first question, I feel very special. I never gave a presentation at 4:30 in the morning. So that's a very special feeling. Well, I regret so much I couldn't join physically because the important things we will discuss during this event would benefit from discussing it physically with all stakeholders present in the same room. It will create that bit of extra energy to bring things with even more energy and enthusiasm forward. But I see that you are very enthusiastic, so I think we could really achieve a good result. May I have the next slide, please? Well, my involvement in this issue started a few years ago when I read the State of the World Forest, produced by FAO, as you all know. I thought it was 2016, about agriculture and forestry. And as a forester, I'm striving for sustainable forest management. And my observation was that deforestation will continue when we not interact with agriculture. And I have some observations. You see them on the screen. Well, the latest figures are that the annual loss of forest is 10 million hectares per year. Another figure is by 2050, there will be 2 billion more people on our planet than there are today. And the total global food demand is expected to increase by 35 to 56% between 2010 and 2050. And today's agriculture cannot meet that need. And almost 90% of deforestation is caused by conversion of forest into agriculture land. Well, that are not so very promising figures. Maybe I have the next slide, please. Well, when we look at the global land use for food production, then what we see is that about 50% of habitable land is used for agriculture and 37% for forest. So increasing food production in the traditional way seems only possible by expanding agriculture land at the cost of forest. And protecting biodiversity, to stop deforestation and to avoid climate change, how to achieve green recovery, how to prevent this, increasing agriculture productivity, consume less, avoid food loss and waste. Well, we are really meeting a challenge, how to manage forests sustainably amid increasing demand for food. Well, we are at the World Forestry Congress, but the solutions need to come from agriculture, or am I wrong? But we also know that more than 80% of the world's food in value terms is produced by family farms. So in my view, should be central in finding solutions forward. And is it a coincidence that the UN Decade on ecosystem restoration overlaps with UN Decade on family farming? There should be definitely find some synergies between the two. May I have the next slide, please? Well, all those thoughts I had to discuss it with other people that lead to an initiative to collectively increase the potential synergy between agriculture and forestry focused on family farms. An initiative by the Forest and Farm Facility and the Dutch Ministry will, with several partners, which seeks to provide country-level solutions to ensure food security and strong livelihoods while maintaining forest and biodiversity. Because the dilemma should not lead between forestry and agriculture, should not lead to blaming agriculture. Let's find a solution, synergies. Agriculture needs forest for tempering climate, avoiding soils erosion and regulating water. And of course, we need sustainable food production that will not be at the cost of forest. Well, and we also need to work, therefore, to strengthening links between forest and farm producers organizations, the FFPOs, and small and medium enterprises, ministries, NGOs, civil society organizations, and financial service providers. So we started some pilot work with several partners in Ghana, Kenya, and Zambia to develop portfolios of bankable business plans around baskets of products that support food security and sustainable forest management. Because what we need to achieve, what we like to achieve, needs some investments. Well, we came quite far, but at the very end, we used the expertise of Lady Agri, which is an impact investment hub, a network of international and African professionals supporting women agri-entrepreneurs in Africa and small island developing states. And they supported FPO members in developing the business cases whilst building the capacity and strengthening the financial literacy of the business case owners. And that leads to some key findings. The next slide, please. Well, the key findings are the ability of banks need to be strengthened, how to deal with FPOs, how to deal with risk in the agroforestry and agriculture sector. There should be communication between banks and FPOs. Well, here at this Congress, I don't know how many participants are from banks, but maybe that illustrates already how important it is. FPO's financial literacy needs to improve in order to interact with financial organizations. And that regards especially regarding risk assessment and management. There are important steps to be made on both sides. This would increase the appetite of banks and impact investors to invest in FPO's activities. A more concrete example, because we like to set some concrete steps, is identify a mechanism to support FPOs with their first loan in order to create their own bankable history, a track record in a financial institution, which would lower enormously that first stone for both sides. And finally, and that's my last thing I like to say, and we discussed it already, and actually we came to the conclusion that it is needed to create a subnational hub platform composed of banks, FPOs, entrepreneurs, and knowledge agencies would enhance cross-actor learning and the identification of lessons learned with a view to promote, to improve mutual understanding and cooperation. This will bring parties closer together and serve all actors involved. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to the contributions of the other panelists and speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. You got us off to a really, really encouraging start. Good to hear what the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality has been doing, and it was interesting to hear your conclusions there. Let's see if we can build on that by hearing what the German federal government has been doing. We have Tony Baumann, who is a senior policy officer at the BMZ, that's the Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the Federal Republic of Germany. He's in charge of the Central African Forest Initiative and also supports projects in the Congo Basin, such as the Congo Basin Forest Partnership, Transhumance and TTT. And we want to get your perspective, Tony, on BMZ support for a green recovery. And if you want to reflect or respond to anything that Rob said, because it was an interesting initial presentation, please feel free to do so. But I'm going to zone in on a particular question for you. What is the BMZ's view on green recovery as part of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals? And what are the main constraints? Because we've heard about problems of that first loan and de-risking. What are the main constraints in achieving these goals and how to tackle them? Basically, I want to know, how can BMZ contribute? Tony.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Henry, and you're a very good moderator, I must say.
Thank you.
Very lively and engaging.
I want to give you life and force and fire.
Yes, thanks so much. So thanks, and also thanks for the first presentation. I must say I've taken a lot away with me. It was good to see those graphs to put it into perspective. How much does agricultural land take away from our overall land mass? And how little actually settlements are percentage-wise of the global land mass. I was not aware of that, so thanks for that. So Henry, dear co-panelists, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to the panel of this special event, as Henry has pointed out. And congratulations for bringing this year's theme, Building a Green, Healthy and Resilient Future, on the agenda of the World Forestry Congress. And thank you so much also for South Korea for hosting this event and for inviting all of us. You have a very interesting, very special country. It is an excellent platform, this World Forestry Congress, to focus on the current challenges of mankind, like degradation and exploitation of ecosystems worldwide, combined with political crises, natural hazards, and health pandemics. For more than 2 years, COVID-19 is severely impacting on people's lives worldwide, and most likely also on all of your lives, as it has on mine. As a response, recovery funds were mobilized to integrate climate and biodiversity concerns in COVID-19 response measures. The result is the concept of a green recovery. This recovery process needs to stimulate a transformation of both the economy and society that focuses on sustainability and climate protection. It is a socially just and low-emission approach that is guided by the 2030 Agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. But it also serves the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and the strategies for post-COVID-19 recovery. In this context, the coronavirus crisis and the climate crisis are offering a dual opportunity for economic reconstruction while setting the course for climate neutral and climate resilient economies by the green recovery. Sadly, and this is a more personal observation, it seems to me that most governments in the world, most people in the world, do not want to seize the opportunities that COVID has provided us with, but rather just want to go back to the things they were before the crisis. Leaders and stakeholders around the world are calling for a green recovery from the pandemic that builds back better. In this regard, governments play a key role by developing smart policies, discouraging market distortions and unsustainable practices. The German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, supports the green recovery with a multiple approach in the frame of its guiding principles. First, by combating the COVID-19 pandemic and presenting future ones, green recovery and preventing future pandemics, green recovery helps to treat the problem at its roots. Second, by reducing hunger and poverty in the sense of leaving no one behind, the guiding principle of the 2030 Agenda, this is more topical than ever, as natural hazards at the Horn of Africa or the war against Ukraine will trigger lack of stable food in many countries. Henry has pointed out that I am working in the Central Africa region, and the war in Ukraine has and is leaving its marks in terms of food security. Third, by just transition. The transformation towards ecologically sustainable, climate-neutral living and economic activity is the most important global task in the 21st century. But the transformation to climate neutrality must be linked to social compensation everywhere in the world. And fourth, by feminist development cooperation. My federal minister, Svenja Schulze, has proclaimed a policy that makes a central contribution to justice and crisis prevention by specifically promoting women, which guarantees that there is less hunger, less poverty, and more stability. Addressing the global challenges requires strong political will, good governance, and a joint show of strength by all stakeholders, public and private. As Rob has pointed out, one way would be defunding risks, and I think it is a very important way for governments, due to the lack of good funding, to acquire more private funding. A lot of private investors that I talk to are always afraid to invest in risky environments, so I think it is the role of the governments to de-risk those funding to attract private investors, because countries in the world, they do not want development aid. What they want is investments. They do not want to put their hands out for money. They want to have investments to build on the capacities and the knowledge and the technologies they have. Thanks.
Tremendous. And I want to ask you a quick follow-up question, Tony. I like what you said, especially this term, feminist development cooperation, which I've not heard put in that way before. I'll go away and study it. Follow-up question, and briefly, if you will, how do you see the role of smallholder family farms? Because that's a big topic here today, that the role of those smallholders contributing to green recovery, bearing in mind that We've got 2 UN decades underway, the decade of family farming and the UN decade on ecosystem restoration. So briefly, smallholder family farmers, because that's important.
Yeah, I think, as you said, we are in right now in the UN decade on family farming and the UN decade on ecosystem restoration. And the German government, especially BMZ, is considering both by supporting the forest and farm facility with its context-sensitive approach and bringing local people to the core of a green recovery as a good solution. One set of such key measures is building on smallholder forests and farms in forest-rich landscapes. As agents of change for forested landscapes, family farmers, as well as their forest and farm producers organizations and rural small and medium enterprises facilitate and sustain climate-resilient landscapes and improve livelihoods for a comprehensive green recovery. It is the combination of ecological aspects in combination with socioeconomic benefits which makes the restoration of ecosystems the crucial approach here. So without them, we cannot win.
Tremendous. Thank you very much. Well said. I'm sure we'll develop that during the session. Now, so we've heard from the Netherlands. We've heard from Germany. I think we need to hear from the Swedes. Cedar. Well, why are we laughing? The Swedes, they punch above their weight on these matters. I mean, certainly as I travel around, I hear a lot about the Swedes getting involved, especially CEDA, the Swedish Development Cooperation Agency. Matthias Lindström currently holds the position as co-lead for blended finance, the kind of stuff you were talking about there, Tony, and mobilization of capital at CEDA's Department for Global Strategies. Previously, he worked in Afghanistan for CEDA and also at the European Commission as well as for private employers. Can we see Matthias? Is he with us? Because I want to ask him a question. If we can get him up on the line. Do we have Matthias joining us from Sweden, or is he in Rome? Can you find him?
Hi.
Ah, good.
Do you hear
Matthias,
me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can't see you yet, but I'm sure you'll be joining us in a second. Because I want to ask you this, because we've heard the examples of the Netherlands and Germany, and so far so good. But what about CEDA and what you are doing? Share with us how guarantee funds can enable rural finance, especially by de-risking, as Tony was saying. What are the key success factors for having successful guarantee funds?
Thank you so much. I'm happy to elaborate on what we do in the field of guarantees. I also have my my other colleague with me here, Ola Medelberg, also obviously from CEDA. So thank you. I mean, traditionally, CEDA works a lot with grant funding to civil society organizations, UN bodies, etc. But we also work with blended finance and mobilization of capital. We don't necessarily believe that one thing is better than the other, but that they're very much complementing each other. So what's the sort of idea with the guarantees and other sorts of instruments? I mean, as previous speakers have indicated, it's a lot about de-risking. It's about mobilizing local banks to serve underserved segments like the agriculture and forestry sectors. We want international investors to come in, institutional as well as, I mean, and or commercial. And then, of course, everybody in this room probably knows about, I mean, the sort of challenges. Why doesn't this happen already? Why don't the local banks move into the rural finance? Why do not big equity and debt funds move into the broader sort of SDG social sustainability field? I mean, to the extent that we want to see. And I think some issues have been pointed out already. I mean, it's about actual and perceived risks, high transaction costs, the governance and financial literacy issues. It's a whole set of stuff. So how do we move? How do we incentivize local banks and investors to do this? And blended finance is one way. I mean, it's probably not a silver bullet. A lot of other things are needed too, like on the institutional and policy side. But it's one way. And in this field of blended finance, there are various instruments. I mean, you have equity, you have debt, technical assistance, and then guarantees that can de-risk transactions and hence make these commercial players more interested. That little nudge, maybe they sit there and think, yeah, should we do this or not? It's not that profitable, high risk. Okay, you get that little de-risking nudge to make it happen. Things that would not have happened without blended finance. It's there we want to go. So this word additionality is what we use a lot. Meaning to have that sort of added value to make things happen that otherwise would not have happened. At SIDA, we don't have any debt instruments or equity instruments. That's the role of, let's say, the IFCs and other development finance institutions of the world. But we have guarantees, and they are unfunded. So it's actually more of an insurance product. And with this product, the guarantee, we target financial institutions. That can be international equity funds or debt funds. It can be local banks, sort of the whole spectrum, where we have the chance to sort of tailor make this instrument. So to give a few, a little bit like how it actually works in practice. So let's say we have a meeting with a local bank in let's say Uganda. They have been thinking about moving into the rural space. They know the challenges, but they're interested too, but they can't really sort of justify it internally for a variety of reasons. So then we have a discussion with them, and for instance, one path could be that a SIDA guarantee covers, let's say, maybe 30% of a certain amount of loans in the rural field. We will not cover their whole business and no existing business, because we want to have the additionality. So we tell them, if you do this, then this guarantee will apply. And what this means that if you have, let's say that this bank in Uganda provides a loan to a farmers producers organization. In case this loan defaults, meaning the money doesn't come back to the bank, then the guarantee is triggered and we will pay out the sort of protection level to the bank. So this is the sort of idea that with the instrument, we will push them in the direction to start lending towards the rural finance.
Matthias, we're coming towards the end of your allocated time at this point, but very quick follow-up. How successful has this approach been?
We believe that it works, and it's quite easy actually to follow up on it, because if you issue a guarantee and you monitor what happens, you can see the flows to, let's say, this segment of rural finance after you have issued a guarantee. So it's almost like they're on paper, so to speak. And of course, the other way around too. If you issue a guarantee, but you don't see any more on lending to this segment, then it doesn't work. And then you can ask yourself, okay, what's the problem really? Maybe it's not about what can it be? Is it about informality? Are the transaction risks still too high? You know, a little bit of a diagnostic on that. But essentially, what's important for us to point out that we are actually like a supplier to financial institutions and banks in this sense. So we need to make this happen. We need to forge these partnerships with a variety of players around the world.
All right, Matthias, I'm going to have to let you finish there. Thank you very much indeed for giving us that example from Sweden. And it's great to see, well, the indications from you are that it's working. Let's see what the picture is in Finland, because we've heard from Netherlands, Germany, Sweden, now Finland. Because Dr. Ann Arvola is with us live here in person at the podium here. And Ann is a senior development impact advisor in FinFund, which is the Finnish fund for industrial cooperation. And she's got a long background in forestry, resource management, more than 20 years of experience in development finance and cooperation in emerging markets. And that's what she studied in her doctorate, smallholder forestry and forest policy in the Global South. So you're perfect. Everything you ever did was leading to this moment. Very good. So we want to hear from you about inclusive rural finance and credit for implementing the green recovery that we're also passionate about this morning. So let me ask you about the challenges that you see for family farmer businesses to access investment from FinFund or anywhere else. What more can be done to enable rural finance through impact investing? You see when I say impact? Impact.
Thank you, Henry. Now I truly feel special.
Good.
It's a pleasure to be here. I would say a great gathering for all the relevant actors in this fair. And so, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I would say. So, like Henry already introduced, I'm coming from FinFund, Finnish Development Financing Institute, and we have some key sectors we are investing in, and among those are forestry, agriculture, financial institutions, financial technologies, and so on. And like Henry said, I'm truly a passionate smallholder forester myself, having grown up on a farm, actually. Oh. But I think I want to take a little bit of a different angle here in my speech to the discussion, because I can also see that there is already money moving towards the bottom of the pyramid clients in the financing world. So could you please give me the next slide? So the thing is that access to finance in rural areas, as much as it's a bank issue, it's also a technical issue, I would say infrastructural issue. And when we talk about inclusive financing, we should also talk about digital inclusion, actually. So we have already seen in the developing world that mobile money is widely spread, well accepted, kind of a standard practice. And similarly, I think the fintech, financial technology solutions, they are following up. They are growing and expanding rapidly. So here in this session, we are discussing this as a positive opportunity, although we have to keep in mind that not all the operators in the financial technology business are actually acting responsibly, and that needs to be kept in mind when we are searching for partners and services and investees also in FinFund. But back to positives. So I would say that smart, responsible financial technology solutions have a potential to provide access to financing to those who have been previously excluded. And those solutions, they can create a credit history and profile also for those bottom of the pyramid clients and lenders and, let's say, rural, micro, small and medium-sized enterprises as well. And also micro-lending organizations are actually increasingly starting to utilize these technologies to expand their coverage and even increase the services they can provide for their clients. So those platforms, they only not serve for lending money or or actually savings, but they can also deliver other kind of information for the clients. So next slide, please. So then I need to discuss about the but in this story, I would say, fintech story. So it's clear that the technologies are serving a rapidly growing number of clients in emerging markets and helping them to invest in their businesses and also cope with the emergencies of their daily lives. And that is clearly demonstrated in our projects as well, what we have been financing in Finland. But the but here is that those services can only reach people who have access, first of all, to mobile network, and secondly, also preferably to a broadband network. And in addition to that, of course, a person needs to afford to buy and keep a phone, and also pay for the mobile operator for the service they are using. And in this slide, you can see some facts from a recent GSMA study, which demonstrate that even though in this world already 94%, which is to me quite a good number, of population actually is covered by mobile broadband. Still 3.4 billion are actually not using it, even though there would be coverage. And like the slide demonstrates, these issues are more severe in Africa, and especially in rural Africa, and especially among rural African women, because in general, it's less likely that a woman owns a mobile phone, and even less likely that a rural poor woman in Africa would own a mobile phone and have access to mobile broadband. So that needs to be kept in mind, that who has access to this type of financing. But to comfort the audience, I can say also that this gap is actually, it's recognized among the mobile technology industries, also among financiers, and we are working on it. So let's see that advancements will be quick. So let's take the next slide then, please. So if we trust that the technologies are available to bring financing also available to farmers, rural farmers and enterprises, then we need to reflect that to the experiences I have from the smallholder context and the smallholder tree growers. Because I think this is already access to this type of small loans, for example, through technology companies, is actually a big step ahead. We are particularly interested in trees, but we must keep in mind, like previous speakers have said, that a typical farm is actually diversifying their production and should do that. And tree growing is usually only one activity among others, and not even the most critical one if we think about their livelihoods and daily survival. So with this kind of financing, those problems we recognize, like premature harvesting of their trees, can be tackled, because then you have access to a loan which can help you to pay for school fees before you can harvest your crop, or if you have a sudden illness or similar problems. So this type of loans, they reduce the need to touch those green banks, their trees they have been growing. But then in addition, and this is where I see farmer organizations' role being critical, is that farmers also need knowledge if they want to invest that type of loans and money into productive activities. And here I refer especially to climate smart farming practices, for example, both in traditional agriculture and tree farming. And then, in addition to that, they need access to those inputs that are required, because often still what you can have in a local market in rural areas is that which supports the traditional, the 1960s Green Revolution type of farming activities. And then, to catch my thought,
Well, it's
I
good that you paused just now, Anne,
because you're
have
not giving me
have
more
reached
time.
Kitos. I'm assuming that's
Oh,
finished. so
you're
thank
cutting
you.
me off because I think the insurance side is also important. That has been also mentioned. But it's not only for those financial institutions, it's also for the farmers, I would say, a critical thing. And those are not yet accessible. And farmer organizations, I think, are in a crucial role to make them even, well, I would say feasible, affordable, reachable for smallholders, to make them investable for any financial institution.
Very good. Thank you very much, Anne. I'm going to have to bring you to a close there, but you are going to come back a little bit later on when we've heard from some of our other speakers. So, Anne Arvola, thank you very much for your contribution. Great. Okay, now let's go to Kenya. You talked about the digital divide there, Anne. Let's go to a country which is considered to be a middle-income country these days. I'm talking about Kenya, a country I know reasonably well. Now, our speaker was going to be Julius Kamau, who is a senior member of the Kenya Forest Service. He's actually at the head of it, and he's been spearheading great transformation in that particular sector. He's not able to join us, but Clement Ungarieng is Deputy Chief Conservator of Forests, that's his title, and he's going to join us in place of Julius. Let's see if we can get through to Clement, because I'm going to ask him a couple of questions, and let's see what his perspective is on what we've heard so far. And also, he can tell us about, there we go, fantastic, we can just about see you. Thank you very much indeed, Clement. So you've probably heard what's been said thus far. We've heard from donors, impact investors, mechanisms for rural finance, plugging the gaps, and the Kenya Forest Service has done a lot in linking basket of products in landscapes with diverse and inclusive finance. It's a very, very important thing for you, investing in forestry sector and partnering with FFPOs. So tell us how the diversification or the basket of products approach is enabling inclusive and diverse finance to forest and farm producers. Over to you, Clement.
Thank you so much, session moderator Henry, doing very well from Korea. Fellow keynote speakers and delegates, all of you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen from Nairobi. We have just woken up. And I want to say my name is Dr. Clement Ngoriareng, slightly longer, but you can just shorten it and say Dr. Clement. And I am representing Julius Kamau, the Chief Conservator of Kenya Forest Service, who was not able to join us because of some other commitments. I want to take this opportunity to register our gratitude to the event organizers for granting Kenya this opportunity to present its experience in rural financing for green economy efforts. Chair and fellow participants, Kenya is endowed with a wide range of forest ecosystems, from montane forests, savanna woodlands, dryland forests, and coastal forests. Currently, the tree cover of the country stands at 12.13%, while the forest cover is at 8.83%. Now, the forest cover is still below the internationally accepted minimum of 10%. So as a country, we are required to do a lot more so that we can even move up 15% tree cover and 10% forest cover even in the next strategic level. Let me say, moderator, that Kenya Forest Service is the state agency under the Ministry of Forestry and whose mandate is to conserve, manage, and protect gazetted public resources in line with the Forest Conservation and Management Act 2016. Also provide technical support to the county governments to manage the forest resources within their jurisdiction. This legal framework, moderator, provides for the service to work with partners and stakeholders in achieving and maintaining this 10% recover. This is premised on the fact that the service cannot manage this requirement alone. Now, the government recognizes the role, contribution of smallholder tree farmers in the forest sector. And currently, smallholder farmers contribute about 40% of the country's timber demand. And forestry has potential to produce quality timber products, increase farm incomes, and support community development through employment and other environmental benefits. The Ministry and Kenya Forest Service, in collaboration with FAO, of the United Nations, the Farm Forestry Smallholder Producer Association of Kenya, and we effect have been implementing forest and farm facility program in Kenya since 2014. And the goal of the forest and farm facility is to support forest and farm producers and their organizations to enable climate resilient landscapes, improve the livelihoods. These producers are key players in reducing poverty, significant contributors to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and nationally determined contributions to fight climate change as part of the Paris Agreement. The strength in numbers of the FFPOs is particularly important as they play a central role in the development pathway for the groups out of poverty. And in spite of growing understanding of the importance of forest and farm producers and their organizations, a low proportion of funds from major sustainable development and initiatives on climate change, food security and nutrition are channeled directly to the groups. So the FFSPAC, Association of Kenya, have been working together, and recently we signed phase 2. And phase 2 is actually focusing on capacity building for the FFPOs that are in Kenya, in some 7 counties in our country. And we are dealing with Farm Forestry Smallholder Associations of Kenya, Bamboo Association, Tobacco Producers Federation of Kenya, Agriculture Platform, and Gum and Resin Associations. Now, the Kenyan model of developing the basket of products from forest and farm landscape follow the following steps. A particular landscape on both farms and forest landscape is identified. The community is mobilized and conducted to rally producers through their groups around a particular forest or farm product. The groups are encouraged to form a producer association or cooperative. The producers are then registered with the relevant government authorities, and the FFF team then makes a call for proposals. The small producer groups apply for the small grants program, and a committee which comprises of stakeholders then vet them and be able to link them with the financial service producers. And we look at logistical structures, technical soundness, feasibility, competence, and quite a number of other items. So the producer organizations have been supported by FFF team to build their capacity in the following areas: bankable business plans, financial grant management, leadership skills, collaboration and networking, gender inclusivity, and mainstreaming project implementation, risk management, and market development. And I want to report that the farm and farm forest organization in all the counties have successfully been linked financial services within the respective counties, and FFPOs are currently selling farm produce within and even out of Kenya.
That's great news. Great news, Clement. Delighted to hear that. Thank you very much indeed. The reports from Nairobi and from those 7 counties and across Kenya are very positive indeed. I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to have to stop you there now. You gave us some very good information. There was a difficulty on the line. Not everybody will have heard everything that you said, but I think we got the gist that you really are working very, very hard on the basket of products approach. And from what you're telling us, it is positive, it's working. Communities are being mobilized across several disciplines. They're tendering ideas and they're being supported by the government agencies. So thank you very much indeed for now. Clement Ngorereng, Deputy Chief Conservator of Forests for the Kenya Service there. We're now going to hear some country-specific cases from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. I'm going to, before we hear from them, Tony and Anne, I can now invite you to resume your seats because we're going to have eyes forward onto the screens so we can hear from our colleagues, 2 of which are going to be joining us live, 1 recorded. But they're all going to be on screen, okay? So I said Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Country-specific cases. And first of all, we have, I'll give them a round of applause as they come off the stage. Thank you very much. Ms. Bharati Pathak, who is chairperson of the Federation of Community Forestry Users Nepal, FECOFUN. She is the focal point for FECOFUN's Gender Policy and Advocacy Program. She got a lot of support. She's been Treasurer and General Secretary of FECOFUN for a decade previously. So, Ms. Pathak, Bharati, FECOFUN has been engaging with the government of Nepal in, there you are, good to see you. Fantastic, smiling too, excellent. In different climate adaptation and mitigation projects. So tell us about your experience in linking a vast forest-based apex organization like FECOFUN with millions of members to climate finance, such as a global environment facility and green climate funds in Nepal. What's your experience been?
Thank you, moderator. Thank you so much. Namaste and good morning, everyone. I'm going to start the introduction. My side, I'm Bharati Pathak. I'm working as a chairperson of the Federation of Community Forestry Users Nepal. I would like to thank the moderator and all organizers in here. I'm happy share in this forum in my experience and my organization experience in Nepal. Community forestry sector in Nepal has been contributing to the income generation and green recovery and enhancing the climate finance in Nepal. Especially, I'm leading in the more than 22,000 community forest users group and affiliated with the Federation of Community Forest Users Nepal. And 2.2 million hectare forest area covered by the community forestry and 2.9 million household affiliated with the community forest users group. So we have a best practice and the best example in green recovery and the forest restoration. Since a long time, community forest users group are directly contributing. They are protecting the natural forest and they are planting the different species, and the CFUGR and the all producer group are in the change maker in the green recovery and the mitigation adaptation part. So I'm going to directly, like a moderator, some queries and the question. Especially, we are working since long time in Nepal with the partnership in FAO and IIED in here, and very successfully running the program of the small supporter to the local community and indigenous people, and capacity building support to the livelihood and the different climate change restoration and income enhancement program. Especially since long time we are directly engaging and playing to the bridging role in the government and local community, and the FECOFUN is advocating the secure the rights for the local community and indigenous people and the women's rights, who are staying in the forest area, who are protecting the forest, who are planting the forest. So that people are a major beneficiary for the climate finance. So especially who are advocating since long time. I would like to update in here. I'm happy to share with you and all team in here. Very important person and different stakeholder are in this forum. In the recent time, the project link in the GCF and the GEF has been launched in Nepal with the huge fund with the target of the supporting the local forest dependent community and indigenous people and the women. Especially we were in agri. This is a very big opportunity for the local community and indigenous people coming the climate finance in Nepal. So we sit in together with the indigenous community network and the local community network such as FECOFON and NIFIN. We were in together, we sit together like that time we discussed with the government also and approved the GCF project, especially in Nepal. So that time, GCF project directly more focused to the support to local community and indigenous people and women's group and directly support to the CFUG. But now, like a very seriously, we are discussing with the indigenous community and FECOFON especially that resource is not going to directly in local community and indigenous people and CFUG. Like a very big example in Nepal, increasing the forest area before is the before the 4-5 years in the 44% forest area and contributing to the community forest users group. And similarly, day by day increasing the forest area now is the 45% forest area increasing and contributing to the community forest users group and women's group and indigenous group who are staying in the forest area. But climate name of the climate finance, big fund, huge fund comes to the Nepal, approve the proposal. After that, no consultation with the local community and indigenous people and the civil society organization. So that is the very serious issues we are facing in here. You know, the like a COVID pandemic time and the earthquake time, directly contributing and supporting to the government and the like a very critical time supporting to the community forest users group. Now when launched the project in Nepal, but no recognition for the local community and indigenous people in the GCF fund. We are very serious issues we are raising in here due to the system of channelizing the government entire for the project implementation.
Bharati, I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So it was quite a sobering picture that you painted of your organization, FECOFON, with all your members not being consulted and the funds that are coming in not coming to your members at the grassroots, even though they're doing all the work and have been traditionally farming, harvesting, paying the price on the front line, but not actually getting the funds that they need. Thank you very much. We'll see if we can compare and contrast that with some of our other speakers. But Bharati Pathak from Nepal, from FECOFON, thank you very much indeed. We're now going to go to Madagascar. We're going to hear from Andriam Parane Ranawasi, Director of FIFATA in Madagascar. FIFATA is an apex forest and farm producer organization. And Mr. Ranawasi has got 20 years of experience, more indeed, in rural development, respecting the environment. And he assumes his responsibilities while at the same time he's running a competitive family agriculture that's growing. He's been coordinating the Malagasy National Committee for Family Farming since 2015. Let's find out from Mr. Ranawasi what the resilient and crisis-adapted finance, production and marketing system implemented by FIFATA is. And he's going to speak in French. So over to Mr. Ranawasi.
Bonjour tout le monde. Tout d'abord, c'est un grand plaisir pour moi de pouvoir participer.
Hello, everyone. It is a great honor to be with you today. and I would like to thank you for inviting FIFATA. FIFATA is one of the 6 farm associations in the region, and we are growing to include not only farm agriculture, but also competitive agriculture as well. And we want to support the activities of our members and also advocate for the rights of our members and enable that they can take part in the decision-making process by the country. Because we are located in the African continent, our situation politically has been quite complicated, and our food stability has been quite shaky because of famine and also climate-related issues. Each year we have cyclones, and nonetheless, agriculture takes a big part, 80% of our production and also more than 30% of our GDP. However, 70% or so of our population earns less than $1 a day and lives below the poverty line. In 1987, we started in the Central Plains, and we provide services for our producers and also support our members so that they can structure various initiatives. And the French Agriculture Agency, FERT, supports the development of FIFATA, both technically and financially as well. We also have a strong partnership with other agencies, such as local farmer associations, as well as national level groups as well. Now, this is FIFATA in a few figures. We are in 11 of our 23 counties, and we cover 300,000 farmer members and are located in a local level. Now, GVEC is a financing facility that brings together communities and village groups and is very systematic. There are weekly meetings where people pool together their money, and they also have microcredit systems as well, and they have a very strict rules and principles that everyone adheres to, and the funds are used for social issues and also for the community. For instance, if someone falls ill or if there is a community need. And it's very important to note that everyone needs to adhere to the rules laid out by this GVEC, and they are used independently and also used as investments in certain agricultural sectors. And if you look in the photo, you can see that people have gathered together after one cycle of the GVEC is over. People come together to take back their returns, and one cycle is about 3 to 4 months, and they see interest in their initial investments. There's also education that takes place regarding sales and marketing, and this community will go together to the community farms where they will be able to learn how to engage in sales and transactions. There are also joint sales activities as well. Harvesters can go to the market and sell their own produce, but they often bring together their products to sell together, which is quite common. And so what we do is we play the middleman by linking the producer and the end seller, the end consumer. And also we provide our farmers and members with environment-friendly, resilient education so that they can become more literate with regards to climate issues as well. For instance, we provided them with training on agroforestry, and also provide them with information with regarding various agricultural techniques as well, such as comfreys or tanasias, so that they can enhance their produce. And here you can see how various organic market gardening is taking place with various compost as well. Here you see women in the community taking part in preparing the nurseries. So this was just a short overview of FIFATA, and I would like to entertain your questions in the later session if time is allowed. So I'd like to say thank you as I close my speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ranuwasi. Really good to hear from you and to hear about how the GVEC works, hopefully how it's spreading wealth and development in those 11 out of 20 counties. Now let's move to Ecuador, because Marco Grefa is going to speak to us. A bit of background to him. He was born in the Quichua San Martin community of the San Pablo parish of the Archidona Canton, Napo province of the Ecuadorian Amazon. So deep, deep inside. He represents the Asociación WINYAC. He's going to give his intervention in Spanish on the lessons learned from the experience of the WINYAC People's Investment Fund and its potential to contribute to green recovery. Señor Marco Grefa, are you with us? Let's hear what you have to say about the experiences of the WINYAC People's Investment Fund. Do we have Marco Grefa with us? Is he on the line? Ah, there we go. A nice green background.
Sí, buenas noches. Buenas noches y buenas tardes allá con todos.
Good afternoon. This is night here in Madagascar, but you are also in the morning time zone in where you are. Can you hear me well? Yes, we can hear you. My name is Marco Grefa, and I am Kikwa from Ecuador. I'm going to talk about WINYAC community, and I am the head of the WINYAC community. And we are also part of the Quichua farm group, where the family farmers are members, and we work towards sustainable development and sustainable farming. Our group was established in 2010, and we have 260 members, and 66% of our members are women, and 25% are youth who are younger than 25 years old, and 100% of them are Quichuans, the tribes living in Amazon. And we're benefiting from this fund, investment fund, and indirectly 5,000 people are beneficiaries to this investment fund. As you can see, we are part of the Nafaganyos National Park. This is where we live. And we all live within this national park community. This is our mission. Our mission is to preserve biodiversity while enhancing productivity, to contribute and support our members in social well-being. Our vision is to provide valuable services and support to lead businesses in Madagascar. And within Amazon, we work with other indigenous people, especially with indigenous people in Ecuador, are the people that we work with. So from where we live, we try to preserve our cultural heritage coming from environment, economy, and social. And we work hard to preserve the heritage that we have carried on from the past. Next is on the lessons that we learned. Since 2010, we have worked together in this initiative, and we work toward having inclusive governance. And we want to build gender equal and socially equal community, and the voice of youth and women are heard and respected within our community. We also want to enhance our bio business and bio startups, and we also need to have stronger access to market. We want to develop value addedness of chakra products that are produced in our forest. This is very important in securing income source for our members. Women, youth, and our members are also working toward creating new jobs within the community. In addition, there's another important point. Another is access to social cultural services. Based on these principles and beliefs, we translated that into our productivity. We are very diverse in terms of our community, and based on our thousands of years of cultural heritage, we're working toward enhancing our production system to improve our livelihood and quality of life. And we also want to secure compensation for all the work and contribution that these forest farmers are contributing to. Then why do we have to continue to work toward green recovery? When you look at our production system, we call this Amazon Chakra Kichwa, and this means that it is an environment where people, plants, and animals all live together. And like I have mentioned, our members are largely women, and under Chakra Mama and Chakra Yaya, they receive training and learning, and they produce and consume and sell the products that they make. And within that community, they also establish startups, and they have built the startup for cacaos and other plants, and banana and cassava are produced in Naco, Orea, and Pasa region. So 16 communities produce bananas and yucca. We have about 90 very special and unique species that we grew in our forest. And Chakra Mama are composed of women. It's a community composed of women, but they come from diverse background, and within the production system, they carry out various activities. For Chakra Yaya, based on diverse traditional knowledge, we use those knowledge to produce different crops. And during the production process, we leverage natural energy source. And let me briefly talk about our indigenous people's economy. We do have commercialization factories, and we do chakra production in an ongoing manner that is carried out within our community. As you can see on this slide, we also incorporate feedback from the market to increase quality of our products and to make it sustainable. And we're also building transparency into our production system. In producing our chakra, we base this production on our traditional knowledge with a robust production system. And it is a very healthy product. And because of that, we are able to provide high quality product to the market. People living in Amazon forest do not just exist for conservation only. Within the community, we are producers of goods, and we commercialize these products to get the right compensation for the work. And at the same time, we work toward forest conservation and production at the same time. Once again, I would like to thank FAO for making this forum possible, and thank you for the invitation.
Muchas gracias.
Very much indeed. It's wonderful to hear what's going on the ground, and it's quite right. You're not there just to conserve, just to survive, but to actually thrive and gain economic development, self-respect, dignity, and growth. A combination of all of those things. So it's wonderful to hear from you about the Winyak People's Investment Fund and the relative success that you've had and the contribution to green recovery. Right. We're now going to move to a roundtable discussion. We've got some new speakers, and I'm going to call them by name. And as I mention your name, I'd like you to come up and take your position at the table there. Our new panelists, Ms. Femi Pinto, Executive Director of the NTFPEP, that's a New Timber Forest Products Exchange Program. Femi, come on. Yes, Femi. We have Gustavo Sanchez Valle, President of the Red Mexicana de Organizaciones Forestales Campesinas. Yes, gracias. De nada, nada. Madam, yes, Cecile, I've been practicing my little Spanish there. Yeah, mucho gusto. Okay, Cecile Injebe, founder and president of the African Women's Network for Community Management of Forests. Cecile, vous êtes bienvenue. Madam Estrella Penunia, Secretary General of the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development. And Ms. Elizabeth Nsabadala, President of the East African Farmers Federation. Please come up on stage. And then we're also going to hear, if we have time, from a couple of our in-person keynote speakers, Tony and Anne, you stay there. If we can get a microphone to you, that would be good, because sadly we can't have you up on stage because of still social distancing. So we'll grab a microphone and we'll bring that to you in just a moment. Can anybody just grab the microphone there? Thank you very much. And then bring them forward to Anne. Thank you very much. And then you and Tony can share that. Thank you very much for that. Wonderful. All right, so we've got our speakers there from regional forest and farmer organizations, producer organizations. Let's start off with Esther Panunia. You're the SG of the Asian Farmers Association. I'm just wondering whether you can relate to what Bharati Pathak stated before, and what is needed to put smallholder forest and farm producers on the agenda of climate finance. Esther.
Thank you, Mr. Henry Bonsu. And I understand that you have 2 questions for me now.
Yes, well, I can give you a second one if you want to take them together, yes.
On the first question,
okay,
I'm very glad to hear Bharati speak during this session. She is a colleague, a sister in our common work of promoting sustainable forest management and forest-based livelihoods in Asia. And listening to her, I identify and somehow feel the challenge she has highlighted as it resonates with ours. That there is much money, or there is money already for climate finance, but there is much work to be done still so that the producers and forest user groups on the ground feel included in the process of governance and implementation and feel the benefits of the financing that were usually accessed in their names. On your other question, what is needed to put smallholder forest and farm producer organizations on the agenda of climate finance, we would like to say 2 things here. 2 needs. First, the need to highlight how we are affected by climate change and what it means to the future of food, health, and wellness of the people around the world. Forest and farm small-scale producers, indigenous peoples, and local communities are the most vulnerable to the impact of climate change, as agriculture relies so much on the climate and the weather. Severe droughts, massive floods, strong typhoons destroy millions, even billions worth of crops, livestock, infrastructure, and sometimes even cost our lives. However, it is the effect to the family farmers of the not so dramatic changes in the weather patterns that are not so much highlighted and therefore may not be given full attention. We are referring to slow but sure unpredictability of changes of the weather patterns. In our farm, for example, we have 1,000 hills of eggplants that are barely trying to survive right now because of the unexpected length and warmth of unexpected higher temperatures. The second, and we think is more important, is to highlight and showcase the centrality of the work and contributions of women and men and young family farmers in forested landscapes, indigenous peoples, and local communities in the work of making the people and the planet healthy, in the work to promote sustainable and empowering food systems, and in the work of achieving the SDGs. Here in the World Forestry Congress, so many experiences have been shared about the good results of individuals, their groups, and communities on sustainable forest land management, agroforestry, agroecology, integrated biodiverse climate resilient organic farming, reforestation, defending our rights to customary tenure and forest lands, fair trade, processing done by women, men, and young farmers. We need to capture these lessons learned, the facilitating factors that help these individuals, these groups, and these organizations that were able to produce these results. And we need to change the mindset that family farmers, indigenous peoples, and local communities are merely victims, nor they are just not only recipients, but through their organizations are solution providers and are agents of change. But coming back to Bharati's question, can I have some more? 1 minute?
You've got about a minute left, yes.
Yes. What is needed for us to apply directly for climate finance? No? First, we want to know where the available funds are, what are the criteria for applying, if we can be accredited, as most of the times we are not accredited. We also need help in putting a very good proposal that speaks the language of many donors. But fourth, and more importantly, we acknowledge that sustainable climate actions need approaches that put all key stakeholders on the table. So in these multi-stakeholder approaches, we will need partners who understand and make true what equal partnership mean, that we, through our representatives, are there, represented from the very start of the design and formulation and budgeting, like what Bharati experienced, but we are also there in the implementation. We should also be there in monitoring, in evaluation of these activities, because we can do a lot. We can act as organizers, mobilizers, to raise social awareness to our constituents. We can be watchdogs and monitorers. We can be policy advocates and responsible citizens who will have exact accountability to our leaders as well. And we have examples of this already, like the support that IFAD and EU gives to build the capacities of family farming organizations, like the recognition that we have in the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program and the FAO's Forest and Farm Facility that has included FOs and CSO representatives in their steering committees and has provided direct financing to us, such as with FFF, so that we in AFA can empower our youth to be advocates.
Tremendous. That's excellent.
Forest-based livelihoods. So thank you very much.
Because I can see you're about to take a breath and then go for another round, and I can't let you.
Thank you.
Because it was compelling, it was magnetic, but I have to bring you to a close, let you land, because we have other speakers who will be just as passionate with the stories that they bring to us. Not least, Cecile Njebet, who is the founder and president of the African Women's Network for Community Management of Forests. Cecilia, from Cameroon, you were telling me. I want to know from you, what is the role of rural women in green recovery, and what is needed to get them fully recognized as agents of change? A bit like what Esther was saying, people are not victims, they're agents of change and participants of meaningful investments in their businesses. Over to you.
And thanks for the opportunity. The role of rural women, I want to get back to the state of world forest that was shared early this week, where they said that there are three interrelated forest pathways that could contribute to green recovery and transition to sustainable economies. And from there, they are talking about halting deforestation. And women are contributing very highly to very significantly to halting deforestation through the activities they are doing. Forest and landscape restoration and agroforestry. Women are also doing that. We have evidence of 60% of women here and there involved in the restoration of mangroves in some countries, in agroforestry activities in other countries. And we also talk about increasing sustainable forest use. That's where the fight of women is also lying on how to make sure sustainable management of forest, sustainable use of the land for agriculture is being guaranteed. So I think women are not only passive, active, but they have really active actors in this area. We don't forget that 35% of food production worldwide are under the hand of rural women, and it's also important to recall that through their agroforestry activities, they contribute to the recovery of the environment. And through the community-based forestry enterprises, we have also cases where they have improved their income, usually up to 25%. What is needed? I was very interested with our first speakers. I remember that Matthias, Tony, and Anne, they were explaining how they are encouraging or they are promoting access to funding to those, and says those who are usually excluded, and rural women are part of those who are usually excluded, because we think that what is needed to them is really getting funded for their activities, to improve their activities, to try to upscale the successes that have been already produced here and there. And I think it was Matthias who was talking about guarantees. Usually they don't access credit because they don't have the guarantees that are needed, that are requested from the financial structure. They don't meet the conditions that are needed to those. So I think we have to stress on specific mechanism that could ease the access to funding to those type of actors called rural women. This is the call. We are talking about rural finance, and we think rural finance should be directed to those rural women who are struggling every day to contribute to sustainable management of forests, to contribute to food security, to contribute to addressing climate change, and to contribute to poverty alleviation. This is the key for them. If they have resources, if they have funding, if they have access to credit, they will improve their enterprises, they will improve their activities, and they can pay for the services that they need. Technical services, capacity building, connection, communication, visibility, governance, skills and mechanisms, monitoring and evaluation. They can pay for that because there are experts, there are NGOs, there are structures that could cover that. But what is needed is those schemes that will help them to access funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Cecile. Wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. Let's move to the end of the table there, to my left there. So, Elizabeth Insamadala. Now, Elizabeth, you're described here as a young agripreneur. You're a smallholder farmer yourself, president of the Eastern African Farmers Federation, and currently you're director in charge of the Women's Affairs. I'm sure you would echo what you heard from colleagues Cecile and Esther about specific mechanisms that will take account of the gaps and the demands that these financial institutions have for proof and evidence that these women, these agripreneurs, will be able to pay back the loans. But I'm just wondering from you, given the need for food is increasing, and it's got to be assured at the local level, we heard this, 80% comes from local and smallholders, especially across Africa. Why does the market not respond to these needs, do you think?
Yeah, thank you very much, Henry. I would like to point out 3 key issues as a background to my response to that question from the second IPCC report. And the first one is that the impacts of climate change are far and widespread than we think. And the risks accelerate faster. And the third one is that the risk of dying under climate risk countries are 50 times more than the normal mortality rate. Why am I saying this? If all these 3 points were speaking to our ears, the market would be responding in a different way. And the status quo as it is that the market is more interested in profit, and the consumers are more interested in, having their needs satisfied at the lowest cost. Yeah. When you look at what we call the first class or the middle class, who are more interested in nutritious diets, are more interested in, traceability of the products that come on their table, they are also not really interested in paying for the true value of food and their needs. Secondly, the consumers also need to understand the dangers to the environment by the different production systems. Most of our swamps and wetlands in most of the African countries, and particularly in Uganda, the country where I come from, you realize that they are disappearing. This is not only in Africa. When you look at even other continents, for example, in Latin America, most forests are disappearing as Latin America goes ahead to produce meat. Indonesia, we see forests disappearing for production of palm oil. So if consumers are helped to understand that they need to boycott, for example, some of the products that are produced in means that are not sustainable to nature, and this would compel some of these companies, multinational companies, that are producing some of these products to make sure that they produce in more environmental friendly way that is very sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for that. You're talking about the ordinary consumers, millions, if not billions of people around the world who have power in their pocket, mobilizing. The question is, how do we do that? But that's not for you to answer now. I've got another question for you. I want to know from you whether crisis-adapted finance is the only solution, sort of what's in the air in this room right now, or are there more sustainable solutions?
Yeah, I would like to say that, of course, adaptive financing, yes, is very important and critical, but it's not the only solution to most of the challenges that we are facing in our different countries that are environmentally related. I'll give you an experience of the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation that for example, we've adopted a climate smart agriculture because of its 3 triple wins to most of our smallholder farmers. Because when you look at some of the practices that farmers are putting in place under CSA, for example, the mulching, the contour digging, the rain harvest, at their farms, but also at their homes, the terracing and other practices, you realize that it has 3 wins to the smallholder farmers. One is on improving the production and productivity. And secondly, it also, it is more enhancing in terms of resilience. And the third aspect is related to its contribution, to making sure that it reduces the emissions to the environment. So we feel like by promoting CSA, it is a sustainable way of preserving and protecting our environment. The other aspect that I would like to bring out is on green energy that we are also promoting. For example, the solar energy, where we are brokering companies that are into solar energy and linking them with smallholder farmers, where smallholder farmers are able to access, let's say, clean energy, light. They are able to, to cook using solar. They are able to have irrigation, small irrigation kits. And also the biogas, we are also promoting biogas production, and farmers are able to, again, have access to clean energy, but also have access to biosilary as a means of fertilizer for increased production. And all these sustainable means that we are promoting under green energy help in reducing deforestation.
Very good.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, thank you very much indeed for that perspective from Uganda and beyond, representing your people well. We're now going to go to Gustavo Sanchez Valle, who's president of the Red Mexicana de Organizaciones Forestales Campesinas, Red MOCAF, which promotes communal forestry and supports indigenous and farmers organizations that own lands in Mexico. So, Gustavo, and I think you're going to speak in Spanish, aren't you, Gustavo? Let me ask you this. I mean, what are the most important lessons you've learned from the Mesoamerican Territorial Fund of the Mesoamerican Alliance of Forest and People, to bring funds to local people? And do you think that the pledging funds of COP26 could provide resources to these kinds of funds managed by communities and producer organizations? Gustavo.
Gracias, Henry, por esta moderación tan magnífica que está haciendo.
Thank you, Henry, for being this wonderful moderator for this session. And before I begin, I would like to thank everyone who are present today. It is an honor for me to be alongside our distinguished panelists and our speakers. I have my fellow colleagues who went before me to speak, and I appreciate all the great insight that you have shared. As for me,
de 6 países de esta región entre México y Panamá están que el sistema
on climate system, let me just briefly touch upon that topic and then also the lessons that we have learned. On the lessons, we're not just referring to the producers in the local community. It also includes landowners. So when it comes to all these people, the climate system is about financing. So these funding, if you look at this financing, this is financing that exists for the government. It doesn't bring direct benefit to the indigenous people and local communities. And one thing that we have to understand is that the government fund or the funding that come from the government agency goes to enterprises, large enterprises and SMEs. When it comes to the unions in the rural areas, these funds does not necessarily flow into those local communities or rural farmers. Indigenous people and local community want to create a system that can benefit us. Through Mesoamerica Alliance, that's something that we want to create by participating in Mesoamerican Alliance. And one thing that is good for us is that there is a priority, and the priority has to be determined by the region, the local community. It doesn't, or it cannot be an abstract discussion at the high level, but it has to be decided at the regional and local level to think about where the funds needs to be spent. That will practically help the local communities, and that's something that we put our priority on. And only then we will be able to achieve changes in the local area and their livelihood. And we need to invest into governance and authority so that these people can invest into startup companies, startup businesses. The government and banks, in one sense, want to directly invest into startups, but when you look at the conditions are too stringent, and then the investment, therefore, is not attractive for us. And lastly, I want to mention that through these mechanisms and through this cooperation, we want to create impact, and we want to have our voice to attract more investment that is in line with the conditions that we can meet. By doing so, our group, we're not trying to replace the role of the government. That's not what we are trying to achieve. The government needs to make effort to distribute fund to necessary places.
It's really interesting what you said about the conditions being just too stringent. The people are there, they have ambition, they want to develop, they want to grow sustainably, but the conditions imposed by the lending institutions are just too stringent. So there is no transfer of funds. This is something we're hearing again and again. I'm sure that Tony and Anne may have views on this a little bit later on when we come back to them. But our final speaker in this part is Femi Pinto, and Femi is the Executive Director at the Non-Timber Forest Products Exchange Program Asia, which is a network of community-based organizations, NGOs, that advocate for and work towards a sustainable management of forests and natural resources, especially on non-timber products. Femi, now after listening to what's been said by speakers and panelists, I'm wondering, do communities relying on NTFP businesses need to change their activities or their organizational structures in order to access finance? Do they need to dance to the tunes of these funds and these banks?
Well, it's good to be the last in terms of having the benefit of listening to the different perspectives here in the last roundtable, but even the last in my group.
Yep.
And I think I would say that the very first thing is probably to have more of these, to listen and learn and learn from like-minded regional organizations that have actually done already the work and have taken certain positions already, and that we would be happy to really adapt to. But let me just explain a little bit more of where I'm coming from. So the Non-Timber Forest Products Exchange Program is an association of 25 members with a network of over 100 partner organizations in South and Southeast Asia that support community-based non-timber forest product or forest enterprises, with already approximately 20,000 enterprise members across 6 countries, from Cambodia, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Vietnam, not counting our non-member countries with whom we also network with. We reach them and support through network activities and provide access to learnings and sharing of good practices and models, methodologies and mentoring, market information around specific products, such as wild honey, rattan, eco-textiles, some food products, and others. We do peer-to-peer linkages, collaborative projects with market and government and intergovernmental actors from local, regional to international. And some of these recent activities would be working to develop or have developed ASEAN guidelines on sustainable harvest and management of non-timber forest products, and piloting alternative participatory schemes to guarantee and lower the cost of marketing products as it is demanded by the market. But this takes a lot of time and effort, although there are some successes. But so it's great to hear from the first round the aspects of access, inclusion, blended financing, capacity building, and integrating forestry and agriculture. But I wonder, after all of these, why haven't we reached them? And so I'm hearing, so you see our reach, but then I received some challenges from our group saying that we need working capital to cover all expenses typical in a business and during the pandemic. We lack comprehensive coverage or financial capital for the typical expenses in our business. We are not registered. It's required. We have all these requirements and we're not meeting them. There are no funds for additional cash flows in times of disaster. Most of the community forestry enterprises have difficulty accessing funds from private investors, lenders, because we do not meet the criteria. So this goes on. And most of the community forestry enterprises, and we actually are doing quite a lot. I felt coming here, we were doing quite a lot, but how come we have not yet reached the level in which perhaps Gustavo's alliance have already made? But we—
Well, you'll have to talk to him.
Yes, and that's what I think maybe the quick answer to your question is probably you're doing the right things in terms of on the ground, but probably reach out to those whom you might learn from, and maybe continue, or this is the first time that I'm sitting in a room with the first round of speakers, and so I think there has to be that connection, whether it's direct, we come up to you or you come up to us, or some kind of a facilitator, intermediary might want to bring us together, both forestry and farm. But another question would be, for example, in terms of climate financing, we are also trying to engage because at the current situation, for example, in the Philippines, forestry is not there in terms of the nationally determined contributions. And so how if our countries are also not including the sector in which we are working with, and we see all these challenges, how will these financing reach these people? So it's a bit of a challenge trying to connect and link up with different types of sectors and channels. And we're trying different strategies: resist, adapt, engage. And that's going to stretch everyone too thinly. And things are also moving so fast. But we still hear indigenous peoples and local communities, community forestry enterprises still needing to raise their capacities. But while things are already moving and the financial flows are already happening, but we still need capacity building. So I'm raising more challenges.
You are.
Than solutions, but at least a message here to say that there is already a network. Maybe it's not expanded enough to be introduced to other players, but I think that has to happen.
Well, very good. Thank you very much indeed for that, Femi. Really, really good. And very honest as well. And hopefully you'll engage with some of the colleagues. You know, you've got Esther, you've got Cecile there, Elizabeth and Gustavo, who are all working in this space and who are all dealing with these challenges. But yes, you referred to Tony and to Anne. It's the first time you're meeting them. Hopefully you'll talk to them afterwards. But you've got the microphone. Let's hear from you first of all, Tony. What is the way forward then? I mean, BMZ, you're determined to do more, to engage, but to get rural finance really reaching the people who manage the land, the small producers and indigenous peoples. Given what you've heard, what do you think you need to do more of, or indeed differently? Because we've had 5 passionate and really thought-provoking presentations, discussions there, and in fact previously as well. Let's not forget what was said earlier by our colleagues on the line. But your thoughts, Tony, on that? Well, what's the way forward, you know, especially to reach financially and so to support the people who manage the land? Hopefully the microphone is working. Have you tried it yet? Voila.
Now it works. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all these contributions. I have learned a tremendous amount of new things, so that's always good. What I'm gathering, and this is actually not the first time, it's not the first panel where I hear these concerns, has been with panels when it came to conversations with the Central African Forest Commission and some other panels too, that funds very often that our governments give do not reach the ground, and not actually the people that not only maybe not most need them, but actually could make most use of them, towards a better future. And that also women have no access to loans, or it's harder for them to have access of loans. And pointed out the gender gap when it comes to using mobile internet. I assume there's also a gender gap when it comes to land rights, making it very difficult for women to access loans. I also hear that people on the ground are not enough involved in governments and decision-making processes of how to actually use the international funds, and that generally speaking there are too many requirements to access funds from private investors and others. So I want to be frank, you know, I mean, the challenges are just very vast, and I think we're all trying to do our best to do it. I hope that my government, with our new minister, who has this very feminist development cooperation approach, and trying to have a more inclusive approach, will tackle these problems. But my government is not going to make the change. It's not going to turn the tide. These are global issues, and I think that so far we have committed $25 million or euros, maybe it is euros, 25 million to FFF, which obviously speaking is not enough, and German contribution alone will not make it. So I can only plead to all the other governments of this world to participate and to make this a very inclusive process, so that it's maybe not only the implementing organizations and big organizations such as FAO that see what happens with the money, but really the people on the ground that make best use of it.
Tony, thank you very much
for
being very frank. No, but no, we need to be frank. Femi said earlier, resist, adapt, engage, I think he said. Okay, and that kind of landed with me. So I'm going to speak to Anne here. I mean, you know, Tony was saying it's not just Germany. Of course it's not. You know, there are lots of other countries who are involved. You've got FinFund from Finland. How could your fund adjust or even adapt, as Femi was saying, to the financial needs of forest and farm producers, organizations that we've heard from just now, which seem to, you know, have got this missing middle, you know? They're not connected. You know, people have the needs, the banks and the funding institutions have their requirements, and the two do not connect enough. So what do you think, how can FinFund adjust, if at all, given what you've heard?
We'll see.
Yes, yes.
Works. Perfect. Thank you, Henry. And thank you for the great panel. You are not leaving much to say, because I think all the critical points have been raised there.
Yep.
As FinFund, one reason why I actually brought up the financial technologies and financial institutions here was the fact that that's the way that we at the moment can operate towards the smallholders and the small enterprises, because as an organizations, we can't reach an individual farmer or even a farmer organization. They are simply too small units for us to reach and manage. So that's why those intermediaries are needed. And we are very much looking for that kind of financial institutions that are targeting, are serving agricultural sector, forestry sector, smallholders, and small rural enterprises. So what could we do then more?
Yeah, or differently, more of or differently.
Of course, we need to scale up as well, but we can't create projects. We work with existing companies. So we need to be maybe more active in finding that kind of institutions and then build up, of course, their capacities as well to integrate, for example, climate concerns in their financing agenda. So that's what we can do. And I would say that Fanny quite nicely pointed out the kind of mismatch we have. We are not meeting in the right places. We are participating our own conferences, the financing world, and then the farmer world, and those don't meet. And the scale we talk about is so different. The financiers talk about tens and hundreds of millions, and the need at farmer level is like, well, if you could borrow me $100.
Yeah.
So that is something we really need to work out to build channels
that can transfer those hundreds of millions into manageable amounts for a farmer level. Because the world recognizes that the change is happening at farmer level. It's just that financial world is not used to operate.
It's amazing that we
there.
still haven't adapted enough yet.
Yeah.
If you consider what most people need is not millions, it's just a few hundred most of the time. Do any of our panelists want to respond to anything that Tony or Anne has just said? Any of you? Yes? Okay, go for it. Was it Femi or was it Elizabeth or Cecile? Cecile, was it Cecile?
Yes.
Yes, okay, go.
Maybe I can start?
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you.
Just be brief if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that we need to adapt because we need to make sure that those who are in need have access, that's first. But we can also develop mechanism with umbrella organization that can serve as the medium. You know, if you have million and you can give million, and it's only the million you can give because you cannot go at 100, then you give the million to an umbrella organization who will spare it out among millions of other women who need 100. I think we can also think of those type of mechanisms where you have, like we are in FFF. FFF is not a rural woman. FFF is also like an umbrella organization working with millions of producers, men and women, all over the world. So I think those type of mechanisms could help to address the conditions of some of the financial structure. We understand it very well, but it's possible. For the German government, those are partners, organizations, development partners who are very present in our countries. I'm from Cameroon, I'm from the Congo Basin, I'm from Africa, Central Africa, and we know how much the German government is working. But the problem is that they have the relation with government, usually. We have to go with GIZ to get maybe that type of relation with other actors like rural women, like NGOs, like civil society. Maybe that also can be a way forward, how we can link up not only with government, but with all other mechanisms that exist. That
you've landed. I think Esther Penunia wanted to have a word, and all of you do. Okay, Esther, go.
Thank you. Maybe a way forward is that for our governments, I know that you always issue, for example, call for proposals. Maybe one criteria that you can do in climate financing is a criteria that states that producer organizations, women organizations, grassroots organizations should be involved in the design and even in the implementation of the program, and that there is a certain budget allocated for direct financing to these communities. Actually, we are advocating for 60 to 70% of the budget for really spending in the on-ground activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Elizabeth, yes, you wanted to, and then Femi. I think Femi, did you want to go as well? Elizabeth.
Yes, the different initiatives that this group has pointed out and other several groups, of course, require scale up because they are usually a drop in an ocean. But to put them to scale, they require financing, as has been pointed out by my colleagues. But this financing, I think beyond access, we also need to look at affordability, but also try to be as innovative as possible, have a mix of financing, where, for example, we have a component of technical assistance, but also the financing for scaling of activities. And also, when you look at the challenges in terms of access to financing, it's because most of the public banks, for example, financing institutions, require collateral in form of security like land titles and so forth, which the smallholder farmers don't have. So if we can have innovative mechanism, for example, where farmers can present data on their production and can be used as security to access financing, that would be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before Femi comes in, Anne, quickly, you wanted to respond to something you've just heard?
Yeah. Okay.
Tap. We need the microphone on.
Yeah? Now working?
Yes, yes, yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Elizabeth. I think you pointed out one critical, maybe that kind of missing link, in that sense that often the activities, they begin with grant funding. And for some reason, I would say that there is still, maybe because of that, missing that part of that business mindset and thinking, which then should be there when you start applying for actually private funding. And that channel, that tube is not working. Those preparatory phases you do with grant funding, they don't actually lead yet to bankable projects. So that tube is something that needs to be fixed and widened so that we get more of that kind of projects that are truly financially bankable.
And ready, essentially, is what you're saying. Femi?
Just a quick one on the aspect of the forestry and farm integration and developing a modality for that integration. I come from an organization that really advocates for non-timber forest products, and I would say that there's a particular context in terms of the production, in terms of the territorial nature also of the production or the harvest system, which might also have an implication in terms of how the timing of financing and all that and the requirements. So I'm not sure necessarily that if we're going to create mechanisms, intermediary or meso level of an immediate idea of forestry and farm would really address the concerns that we're having. I think this would require also studies in terms of the appropriate financial mechanism to channel to those different types of livelihood activities. Well and good that we all have the intention to make it directly access farmers, but there are also particularities in terms of the gathering system, the harvest system for other types of products like coming from the forest. So just a note to say all these needs to be assessed as well.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed, panel. I'm about to go back to Rob Boesink, who started our conversation today. He's the Senior Policy Advisor at the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality. But in the interest of fairness, Gustavo, did you have 30 seconds of something to, very briefly to add?
Sí. Sí, gracias.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As for me, I have a couple of comments to make. First, there is a promise. At COP26, there was a pledge on financial support. And there has been pledged to invest $1.7 million in rural area. And that discussion is being carried out at the moment as we speak. And among that fund, most of the fund will be trickled down through the funding mechanism to indigenous people and to local communities. So this mechanism is set up by the local community and indigenous people. So the fund will trickle down to these people. So we will soon have COP27. And at COP27, what we're going to discuss is we need to provide updates on how we're going to finance. And regarding FFF, we need to share more experience among ourselves. And we will need to further discuss about how the financing is happening within FAO members, and whether it be Mesoamerica or Latin America or Amazon, we need to share what is actually happening on the ground. I know there is a financing mechanism on the ground in specific regions, but by sharing a lot of this information, we can learn more. In order to create a new future, we have to proactively engage. Thank you for listening.
Very much indeed, Gustavo Sanchez Valle. Thank you very much indeed. And now let's briefly go back to Rob Busink, who's standing by. He's been making notes. He's got a number of things to say just before we close. So, Rob, let's hope we can reconnect with you, because I know you want to help to bring us home. Over to you, Rob Busink.
Thank you very much. I get 5 minutes to
No, you get 3.
summarize. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, I have 5 minutes to make some closing remarks and setting the main points.
Rob, I told you you had 3.
Sorry?
I said you have 3 minutes. We're over our time. But I know you can
3
do it.
minutes.
I know you can do it.
Okay, I do my best. Well, at least I must say I was overwhelmed with the richness of information and the experience. But to come to what I like to say, actually, what I described in my introduction the challenge we are. How can we ensure food security and nutrition, and at the same time achieve sustainable forest management during this World Forestry Congress? And therefore, we need to mobilize a lot of money, not only public money, but especially private money. And what I've heard today is that we have an excellent infrastructure to the forest and farm producer organizations, which educate their members, etc. And only the problem is they don't get access to finance. Of course, we have all kinds of instruments to de-risk it and to guarantee funds, which I regard very important. But they need to have some instruments that they get direct access to finance, but also that they need to be paid for those tasks like maintaining forest, producing food, which in my view are global public goods, which are very important, for which they need to be paid and get direct access to. And when they get that direct access to that type of money, then maybe we can create much more business cases, and also then we can mobilize more private funds. And that's important because we can remember in 2008 we had the banking crisis and hundreds of billions of dollars were made available to save the banks. Here we have to save our food security, our biodiversity, and our climate. So we need that money, only we have now this excellent infrastructure. I made some action points because we, at the end of this conference, we need to come to some conclusions. And I have some, already did some preparatory work. Well, that is getting finance adjusted to the reality to small-scale producers will be essential for implementing the pathways, the green recovery. Lessons from successful and scalable experience need to be shared. Also, promising developments in mobilizing private sector finance for the forest pathways should be encouraged and monitored. And also what we already heard, there should be digital access. And we have now the opportunity, was said by, at the very beginning, because we need a transition and we need what we have learned from the COVID-19 experiences, we need to change. And we already heard women could be agents of change, maybe I should say angels of change to that new situation. Also, we need to strengthen local producer groups as a means for engaging small-scale actors in local recovery and development. I think without those FFPOs, we can't meet the global challenges we are facing now. So there are much more to say, and there are no takers. So I think that we will have a good result of this meeting. And
Tremendous,
I really
Rob.
like to thank everybody. So I go back to you, Henry.
Rob, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. I knew you could do it. I knew you could, and you did. Excellent. Before we finish, we're about to leave the room. Johnny Zapata, who is part of the implementation team at the Forest and Farm Facility at FAO, is here. Johnny, you had something you wanted to say at the end. So I'll leave the place to you.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Muchas gracias to all those who have participated in presence, who woke up early. To me, this session, this special session, is a booster of motivation, inspiration. We are already doing very good things. Let's work more close together to make happen all these action points that were already shared today. And I am sure that this rural finance will go to the people and to their organizations. Thank you very much.
Henry, thank you very much. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to absolutely everybody who came. It's been a wonderful session. We'll capture the essence of it in our notes. And I wish you all the best going forward. Thank you very much to all our speakers and all our participants. Thank you very much.